it's actually better for the private company to have a sensible team of advisors and a group of government officials opposite, because I think increasingly private companies realise that having a good, sensible, pragmatic contract is better than having a contract that's too good. If it's too good, it's generally maybe not going to last, and that is the big problem. It needs to be something that's going to last, that can live its life over the 20 years that it needs to live, and it needs to be a nice, careful, balanced contract. If we end up having to renegotiate it every couple of years because it's too good and it's not giving the flexibility that the government needs, then that is bad for everybody, because it slows down the project. It gives a bad relationship with the government. It gives a bad reputation to the investor, because often there's quite a lot of bad feeling around that renegotiation. It's much better to have an open, straight partnership between the private company and the state from the beginning, and have a kind of give and take relationship with them. I think it's a little bit like a good marriage. You have a bit of give and take. People need to have some compromises. It doesn't need to be too good for one party and not good for the other. So that's all I've got to say to start off with.
Often we're hired actually to think about how to organize things. So we look at the conceptual side, for example, on how to share infrastructure. And my experience with that is that you can only get so far. So I think the interesting thing, what Connex does, is that it goes from what I say, the thinking about how you would do things, to the doing. And it's the implementation side during negotiations that is the interesting part of my work. Because you can only think of so much before, and then you enter a negotiation process where you run into existing positions. And I think some of the problems we run into is that you can come up with an idea, but to implement this something wholly different. And you need stamina and you need conviction actually to enter that negotiation and to fulfill it. So I think that's my experience in working with Connex, that we are given the room actually to jointly, public and private, to find a solution. So it's not that you beforehand can think of the solution just as a simple concept. You have to find out what the other parties actually want, what the private mining companies often want in that sense.
But I kind of want to focus in this moment on skills gap, and actually specifically as we're talking about, a lot of negotiations and contract making. I want to look at legal skills gap because, in terms of negotiations, we're also talking about local legal capacity. And it's something that is not discussed a lot. There's usually the notion of, okay, if a government is interested in negotiating mineral contracts, hiring global mining law firms or lawyers to negotiate these deals are critical. And sometimes organizations like the World Bank, the African Legal Support Facility, support governments in facilitating these kinds of, in a sense, meeting these needs, or at least filling the gap in the short term.
My experience in Argentina as when I was in government, actually it was a pity that Connex was not acting in Latin America at that time, because I found quite unique in the ecosystem of the international cooperation. Many times, from the perspective of the government, you have two different things with the international cooperation that I think Connex tackles very well. One is sometimes it's very macro level, and it's true that it's important, but sometimes it's very long term. And the second is that many times when you are in office, you really need something that is burning you, is a really current concern. And the projects of sometimes the project of international cooperation are so bureaucratic and so long that you can end up with another administration when the project is done, and it's very difficult to really get the benefit out of the outcome. So I think that what attracted me to Connex is the idea of getting very quickly into supporting the officials with a specific issue that is really in their desk at that time, and it's always a priority because it's demand driven. So that is not only good, for the cooperation, but also you will find always a good amount of buy-in or ownership from government, because the agenda of the cooperation is absolutely aligned with what you need at that time. And maybe going into the why is also important. I would like to highlight some a characteristic of Connex that's also maybe not obvious, but it's not only about the technical capacity, it's not only about filling the gap of a resource, it's also about authority. Because I agree with Rebecca that we would all of us love a situation where the private companies aligned with trying to get out of a deal the best and most fair and sustainable situation, but and a marriage. But in my experience, is not always the case, and many times the companies are underestimating the governments in a region, in Argentina, in the provinces, and also in other countries where I worked. So it's very important not only for the technical side, but also to have someone with authority bringing the good practices and experiences in other countries to confront the company and avoid that asymmetry that's also in the table, and it's not only technical. How to get that support, or how is the best way? I think is another good thing is to work very closely with government. Very closely means to become part of the team, and I saw that in different projects, and I think is absolutely great for governments to have some experts that are not in their desks thousands of kilometers away working on a report that will send you at the end of the project, but right on the phone, right on the WhatsApp, right on the day-to-day to discuss with you and think with you and supporting you in a daily basis through the process. I think that is absolutely an advantage and something to highlight. And to finish the few things that I want to highlight in the first, I would take in the what question. I mean, what to support, or what are the topics. There's a very nice case that is the Panama project that Connex supported last year. In that case, the contract that was declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court was an absolute scandal from my perspective. And the Panama is a country without any experience in mining. They had no mining experts in the government at all, and they really benefited from the tax expert that Connex brought to the table. And they end up with a deal of 10 times the government take for that project. That is a project of at least 40 years, and it's a giant one in a very small country. So that is absolutely great story to tell.
So I think maybe to zoom out a little bit, or also from our understanding, the BMZ, Connex is quite unique as a project in development cooperation. As we've heard throughout these 2 days, it focuses on contract negotiation support, and that for very good reasons. From a development point of view, we've heard several examples of how contracts can support our partner countries in reaping the benefits, economic benefits of resource exploitation, especially when we look now at the global energy transition, how contracts can anchor strong ESG standards in mining that help set up responsible supply chains. And also we've talked about infrastructure and how projects through contracts, well-negotiated contracts, can be made more resource efficient and climate friendly from the get-go. So with that focus comes also, let's say, the implications of what contract negotiations are like, and they differ quite a bit to other areas of development cooperation that we usually focus on. They are much more fast-paced, and we've heard it now several times. Yesterday, the colleague from Rwanda said they are trying to work at the speed of business, of the private sector. And Santiago just mentioned that it's for the public sector to catch up is sometimes a bit difficult, and so this is something that Connex tries to do, coming, however, from a development point of view. And so for us in designing the project or designing Connex, it was quite apparent that we had to choose an approach that was a bit different, much more demand-driven, and that really helps to provide very short-term and also tailored advice to our partner governments. So in a way, I guess you could perhaps sometimes call it more of a service provider rather than a development project in the traditional sense. And it helps to fill those capacity gaps in the short term, what we've said, but also I believe that there is some capacity that is being transferred, or some skills and knowledges in the process. And we've heard evidence again yesterday from some of our partner countries that we have supported, that it's very much this process of transferring or learning on the job, learning on the go, and these skills that are transferred, that experts bring with them, they include the more technical aspects, but also, again, Santiago mentioned this just now, the soft skills of negotiations, how to strategize, be a private company, how to coordinate negotiation positions among different ministries, how to better stakeholder engagement, and various other things. So there is this element of capacity transfer, if you will, and also from my personal perspective, if you look at it in a more abstract sense, perhaps Connex also can really set precedents or maybe create blueprints in some areas where they work. So if you take, for example, a clause on an environmental issue that is being negotiated with the help of Connex, this may be relevant for specific negotiation, but then also for further negotiation in the future of similar contracts, or might even serve as a blueprint for legislation. So in a way, Connex then leaves something behind that is tangible for government.
First, the mining sector is a very sort of long-term sector. We've heard the discussions about these are investment commitments that span 20 to 40 years, and so that notion of helicoptering and expertise that may work at the initial point of negotiations, but we also realize that good contract making requires enforcement, it requires monitoring, and so over the course of that investment, you're going to have to review the contract. You're going to ensure compliance with the provisions agreed to, and so having the skill set locally is critical to this. And that is when we think about the long term, as opposed to just, as we were talking about, facilitating expertise right at the beginning to negotiate a deal. But we have to remember that there are different aspects of the contract making in mining. It's not just the particular, let's say, MDA or negotiation of a license. There are all sorts of subsets of agreements. There can be community development agreements. There could be local supply agreements. There are just a number of other documentation that support, the larger investment. So ensuring that you have the skill sets locally to monitor the compliance of those contracts over time is critical.
To make closing remarks, Liberia is a beneficiary country of Connex G7 secretariat support, and we're very pleased with the level of support that has been provided to our country so far. I'll follow the conversation and I'm listening to most of the speakers. I think what is critical to articulate is that in these complex negotiations, it's critical for developing countries or countries with capacity challenges to have support. The kind of support that Connex provide brings confidence to the negotiation process, especially mining negotiations, which are very complex, in my view. In the instant case of the support that we've received, we quickly went from around discussing an extension to a mining project, and we dovetailed into an infrastructure piece. And so we needed to have legal, technical, and financial support, which we've been able to receive from Connex, and that has brought confidence to our negotiation process. The support we've received has given us, has brought enlightenment to our negotiating team, but also there's been a lot of knowledge transfer. We're talking about large projects here. We were looking at an extension for an $800 million extension for one mining company. And then we started to look at the infrastructure piece that saw additional mining outfits coming on board. And so it was necessary to have the right kind of support, from Connex in order for us to be able to negotiate these discussions and to have a win-win situation both for the companies and for the government. So we are happy. It's a going concern. The support is ongoing, both with the infrastructure expert, the legal support provided by ISLP in collaboration with Connex. It's an ongoing concern, and this support has been ongoing for the last few years. The last round of support has been since 2019. So we're happy, and not to bore you too much, we'd like to thank the organizers of this forum. We'd like to thank all the colleagues that we've been working with from Connex, from Julian to Sunmin to Richard, Dion, and Bridget. We thank you all for the support, and we wish you all a very, very successful close of this event. Connex support is very, very quick and robust. Yeah. And that was something we needed. And it was very important for us to also, as a new government, to show to to give confidence to the investment community that we had the right team in place to renegotiate or to negotiate new contracts. So Connex support was timely. Connex came on board first with a strategic advisor to review the process. Thereafter, they brought in a mining expert through one of the transaction advisors, Puma Resources. They also brought in an infrastructure company. I was happy to see somebody from the Rebel Group online, Kees, Hörchner, providing the kind of technical expertise that's required to advise a government in terms of making the right decisions. These are very compound renegotiation processes. And because of capacity limitations, from a country that has come from war where there has been, capacity gaps in the public sector. It was important to get the kind of support that we got from Connex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much. What I heard from you is that one really winning point is that Connex is able to provide its services so quickly. My last question was, because we're just talking about, is that, again, the experts are flying in and they're working together with you. How did you experience the relationship with the external experts? Was this on equal footprint, or how did you realize some kind of power issues there?
I mean, it has been a wonderful experience, not just for myself, but for the rest of our team. Meeting, interacting, learning from experts, from the experts that were procured for this particular project. It has been a wonderful experience, especially when it comes to knowledge transfer. The type of work we're involved with requires a certain type of skill set that with these kind of complex conversations is very difficult to come by. So getting the right type of experts to interact with, being engaged, over time they become like family to you. You start to call them on their first names, and you try to keep in touch by WhatsApp and regular calls, because it becomes so engaging and rewarding for not just for high level government officials, but also for our team that support the negotiations.